What if I told you the person who looks the busiest is usually the one with the least control? And the one who seems calm, detached, almost idle, is the one quietly shaping the outcome? That idea feels wrong. Because we were taught a different religion: hustle, work harder, respond faster, stay visible, stay exhausted. Psychology tells us effort equals value. But power doesn't follow effort. Power follows leverage. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never confront. Constant action is often a psychological defense mechanism. It's how people avoid the anxiety of uncertainty. It's how they feel important without being effective. Machiavelli noticed this centuries ago. Not in theory, but by watching rulers collapse. He saw something disturbing. The people who rushed to fix everything ended up controlled by the people who waited. Why? Because in human psychology, reaction is submission. Think about it. When you're always responding, you're never setting the frame. When you're always busy, someone else decided what mattered. When you're drowning in tasks, you stopped choosing and started obeying. That's not productivity. That's conditioning. And here's where it gets darker. In power dynamics, visibility is not strength. Visibility is exposure. The more predictable your actions, the easier you are to manipulate. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers about appearing overly virtuous, overly active, overly involved. Not because action is bad, but because uncontrolled action reveals your psychology. People watch patterns. They study timing. They learn when you react, and when you don't. And once they learn that, they own you. Here's a psychological experiment you've lived through without realizing it. Think about the person in your life who replies instantly. Always available. Always on. Do you respect them more? Or do you expect more from them? Exactly. Availability lowers perceived value. Silence creates gravity. Machiavelli understood that power lives in anticipation, not explanation. The moment you over-clarify, over-justify, over-move, you hand your leverage away. This isn't laziness. This is restraint. In psychology, restraint triggers projection. When you don't act immediately, people fill the silence with their fears, assumptions, and insecurities. They reveal themselves to you. The busy person never gets this information. They're too loud, too fast, too exposed. And here's the paradox most people can't handle. Doing nothing, at the right moment, requires more self-control than constant effort. Your nervous system screams for action. Your ego begs to prove worth. Your anxiety demands movement. But Machiavellian intelligence says, wait. Because the one who controls timing controls perception. And the one who controls perception controls outcomes. Most people never learn this. They burn themselves out trying to look powerful, while quietly becoming dependent on approval, urgency, and motion. In the next part, I'll show you how doing nothing becomes a psychological weapon. How silence destabilizes opponents. Why restraint attracts authority. And the one mistake that turns stillness into weakness instead of power. Miss that distinction, and you don't become Machiavellian. You become invisible. Here's the mistake that ruins everything. Most people here do nothing. And they freeze without position. That's not power. That's disappearance. Machiavelli never praised passivity. He praised controlled absence. There's a massive psychological difference. Doing nothing is only powerful when everyone knows you could act, but chose not to. When your silence feels intentional. When your restraint feels strategic. In psychology, this is called latent authority. The brain perceives withheld action as stored power. Like a coiled spring. But when there's no reputation, no signal, no history of decisive force, silence doesn't intimidate. It invites dismissal. That's why most people fail at this philosophy. They skip the foundation. Machiavelli understood human attention like a weapon. He knew attention is finite. And whatever you respond to, you validate. Every reply trains people how to treat you. Every explanation conditions expectations. Every rush tells others you're afraid of losing relevance. And fear is readable. The psychology of dominance isn't loud. It's selective. Powerful figures don't argue every claim. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They don't chase every opportunity. They let time do the work. Because uncertainty is destabilizing. When people don't know where they stand with you, their mind loops. They replay interactions. They second-guess. They adjust their behavior around you. That's influence without force. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers about being overly accessible. Familiarity dissolves authority. Predictability kills mystique. And mystique, psychologically, creates hierarchy. Here's the brutal truth. The mind respects what it can't fully read. That's why the calm person in the room changes the temperature. That's why the one who speaks last carries more weight. That's why the person who doesn't rush commands space. But there's a sharp edge here. Stillness only works when paired with decisive moments. Machiavelli believed in sudden, overwhelming action. Not constant motion. When action finally comes, it must feel inevitable. Final. Unmistakable. That contrast, long restraint followed by precise force, burns authority into memory. Psychologically, people don't remember effort. They remember impact. This is where modern hustle culture collapses. It rewards visible struggle instead of strategic timing. It trains people to confuse motion with progress. Once that confusion sets in, they become easy to manage. Busy people don't challenge systems. They maintain them. Machiavelli didn't want followers who looked impressive. He wanted rulers who understood leverage. And leverage comes from three things: control of timing, control of attention, control of emotional exposure. Do nothing until doing something reshapes the entire board. That's the art. This isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about refusing to bleed energy into meaningless reactions. It's about choosing moments that matter and ignoring everything else. Because the highest form of psychological power isn't dominance. It's non-neediness. When you don't need to respond, explain, or prove. People feel it. And they adjust. So if you remember one thing from this entire video, remember this. Stillness is not the absence of power. It's the storage of it. Most people exhaust themselves trying to look important. A few let silence build pressure. And pressure changes outcomes.